Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your marriage without your husband's conscious effort so that you feel desired and taken care of and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about what to do when your husband doesn't understand you. My guest, Charlotte, says there was no connection in her marriage. They had nothing in common, no trust, no emotional intimacy. She felt like she married the wrong person. But then she had some insights and started taking a different approach. And today, she says, they have become closer and closer. And she respects her husband now, not because she has to, but because she feels it. She says they have a bright future together. The worst relationship advice of the week award goes to some advice I heard recently about what I should have said years ago when my husband was avoiding me. It's not only ineffective, it's also insulting and bad grammar. All of that is coming up, but first I'm going to talk about what to do when your husband doesn't understand you. We all need to feel heard and seen and understood. And if you're not feeling understood, it's kind of like you're missing a nutrient in your diet and you start to feel malnourished. I remember feeling this way when I would listen to my husband talk endlessly about something he was interested in. And then as soon as I brought up something I was interested in, he'd interrupt me. Harumph. Maybe the lack of understanding feels even more serious at your house because your husband just doesn't seem to get you or care about what you want, which hurts. Well, here are 3 steps you can take to feel not only understood, but also truly seen and adored. Number 1, check your respect. When I was wanting my husband to understand me, I was making a big mistake that was exacerbating the problem. I didn't just want him to listen to me or comprehend what I was saying, although I wanted that too. I wanted him to hear what I was saying, which I felt was completely logical, and to agree with me. Because there can only be one right way to invest for retirement or to properly wash the colored clothes, my way. So the more he didn't seem to agree with me, the more I kept talking and repeating and explaining, only to have him tune me out or defend his position. Or even worse, he would just go and do things his way right after I had just finished telling him the right way to do things. I really believed that he just didn't understand the world and how things worked as well as I did. So implementing the skill of respect, honoring his choices for himself and for the things he did for the 2 of us, instead of teaching him how to do them or just doing them myself, well, that was pretty life-changing. Of course, it was also very scary. It was terrifying. But once I started being more respectful, however imperfectly, he amazingly seemed to hear me so much better. And in the warm and fuzzy circle of emotional safety that came back into our marriage after that, I felt so much more heard and understood. He was no longer trying to defend himself, which changed the whole tone of our conversations, which got deeper and more connected. Number 2, use pure desires. And that doesn't mean I always agree with him. I don't. So if I want to be understood, I have to first start with really understanding myself and what I want. And for me, that means that I have to know my desires and express them without complaint or manipulation, as in, I would love sushi for dinner, or I would love a pool. My desires need no further explanation because they're just what I would love. He may not desire those things, but that's okay. I don't have to convince him that we should have a salmon roll for dinner because we need the omega-3s, or that we need a pool to swim for exercise. None of that's my concern. My job is to just honor my desires, which is one way of letting other people know and understand me, especially my husband. But complaining never got me there. Saying I don't want pizza for dinner left a mystery that he couldn't solve about what I did want. And saying, don't you wish we had a pool? was just me trying to distance myself from my own desire by putting it on him. Expressing desires in a way that inspires is a much better route to feeling my husband understands me. Number 3, get some girl talk. Even though I feel much more understood than I used to early on in my marriage, before I had the 6 intimacy skills and the connection framework, there are some things my husband just doesn't understand about me. But you know who does? My girlfriends, my sisters. There's nothing quite like feeling they understand. They really understand and share some experiences that my husband never will. Somehow, once I've talked to them, I'm more filled up and less likely to feel a sense of urgency that I must make him understand. That seems to be a critical part of my marriage, is having connections with women. These tweaks have taken us so far that now, when we're dreaming about the future or having some other deep conversation, I also feel so deeply understood. If you'd like to be my guest on the Empowered Wife podcast and share about how you fixed a struggling relationship using the 6 intimacy skills, I would love to interview you. Just go to lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest to let me know that you are willing to make a big contribution to ending world divorce by telling your relationship story. I look forward to meeting you. That's lauradoyle.org/podcast-guest. My guest Charlotte says there was no connection in her marriage. They had nothing in common, no trust or emotional intimacy, and she felt like she married the wrong person. But then she had some insights and started taking a different approach. And today she says they have become closer and closer, and that she respects her husband now, not just because she has to or because she's supposed to. She feels it. She says they have a bright future together. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Charlotte, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah. Well, take us back to the bad old days. What was going on in your marriage?
Okay. Well, I got married when I was very young. Naturally, I was idealistic and a little naive. But I had very high expectations for our relationship. Just like every new bride, I wanted my husband and I to be best friends, soulmates, absolutely honest and open with each other and able to talk easily about anything and everything. And since I'm getting ready to launch into the bad old days, it's kind of humorous to think about how wide-eyed and trusting and idealistic I was. And sure, I noticed that we didn't always have we didn't always talk easily. In fact, we had a hard time talking when we first got together. It's like we were happy to be together, but talks on the phone were always awkward. And but I thought, he's a good man. We had a lot going for us. He had a lot going for him. He was really super smart, good looking, hardworking, very kind, very generous. And being 13 years older than I was, I really looked up to him. He knew things I didn't know. He could do things I couldn't do. And even though I was in debt and working in an entry-level job and pretty insecure, he treated me like I was smart and going places. And like all he wanted to do was just support me in whatever I wanted to do. So I thought that naturally, if we spend more time together and build a future together, build a family together, that, we would become better conversationalists and we would become closer. But it didn't really, in the beginning, that progress, I think, which would have eventually, would have come, but it was so slow that I started to think that there was something really wrong. I thought that maybe he just really didn't he wasn't that in love with me, not like I needed him to be. And I started trying to get him to talk a lot about his first marriage. And I was so afraid that since his first wife had left him for someone else, that he had settled for me because he didn't want to be alone. Mm-hmm. And after I got married to him, it was kind of a shock. I met his first wife kind of by accident, and she was just, in my opinion, just drop dead gorgeous. And as I met his family and just learned more about his past, I would see pictures of them together, and their life just seemed so different than our life. Like they lived in this gorgeous house. It seemed much more affluent pre-divorce than post-divorce. Their house was on the historic register. They drove Corvettes and Jaguars, and I just started feeling like, oh, I am outclassed. I see what happened here. This is not really what he had in mind, but this is what he's settled for. And that's maybe why, she was his first love, but that didn't work out. So at least he's got somebody to watch TV with, and I just felt like second best. I kind of probably talked myself into that story. But it was the only explanation I had for why we weren't able to connect the way I wanted to. So we kind of just limped along, and I hoped that, I kept hoping that things would get better. And then one time he lied to me about something pretty insignificant. It was, I was supposed to meet him and a coworker, somebody that we both knew mutually, for lunch, and they were out doing meetings, doing business stuff. And I think they got hungry and it wasn't convenient, or they didn't maybe have enough time to call me. And so they just went without me, which when I asked him about it later, he said they didn't go. And then I found the receipt for the restaurant, and I tried to confront him, and he denied it even after I showed him the receipt. And I know for anybody who's going through real problems, that probably seems ridiculous if you're dealing with abandonment or affairs or addictions or something. That little lie, would seem like nothing. But to me, in my world at that time, I felt like everything is unraveling. Like, I thought I could trust you. I thought we were friends. What happened to being soulmates? Why didn't you just tell me? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, he reassured me, no, I'll never lie to you again. I'm so sorry. But looking back, it was just because I was so smothering, and he was so just likely to avoid any kind of confrontation. It was just the beginning of a long string of lies, our whole marriage. And I started just not trust him, and I started to follow up and ask him, 1,000 questions about everything, and he just retreated. It just made him disengage even more. So yeah, those were the bad old days, and I learned to cope. Like I thought, well, maybe this idea that I have in my head is just kind of a fairy tale. Maybe it's unreasonable. Maybe life just isn't like this. Maybe I just need to grow up and get some of my, interests besides my husband, and try to just be a little tougher, So I kind of, in trying to find more validation, I just poured myself into everything else. Mm-hmm. I became a mother. I homeschooled my kids. I became a very skilled pianist, skilled artist. I became very fluent in French. I started my own business, an enrichment school where I taught languages and music and art, and it grew. And I have almost a dozen employees right now and over 200 students. And so I just became obsessed with trying to be more somebody that that I thought he would respect and could respect. But at the same time, I started to respect him less, because I saw him as not very motivated, not very, ambitious, and also obviously he wasn't trustworthy. I didn't think he had the same kind of integrity that I had. And as I became more confident, I felt like he's not the expert in everything. I know more than he does. And I started becoming very critical, and not only was I controlling, but now I was controlling and critical and judgmental and self-righteous. And I always, I was champion eye roller, and always put him down in every opportunity, kind of just to put him in his place, like to remind him, you're not that great. You're just, I never said it in those words, but I let him know that he was just a big disappointment.
Yeah. Sounds like it was very painful for you also. I mean, even though you're very accountable in the retelling of those battle days, but I hear how lonely and discouraging it all sounds.
Yes, yes. I tried to not need him. That was my defense. That was all I knew to do. But it didn't go away. Those deep desires didn't go away. I was just, like I said, limping along, working with what I knew.
Yeah. And here you sound incredibly accomplished, in other areas of your life. So
And I
I
only
know
say that because I was so insecure before. I was just so, and just to show that the level of commitment I had to, doing whatever I had to do to be someone he would want to be close with, I don't know.
Yeah. So it felt like a lot of the accomplishment was from the motivation of trying to fix your marriage.
Right. And also maybe trying to escape it at the same time, like, well, if I can't be close to you, I might as well find some of my own interests, like talk about self-care. In a way, it was my self-care, but it wasn't self-care, that would make me feel better when we were together. It was self-care that was kind of almost meant to distance us in a way where I felt a little bit less needy.
Yeah, less needy. And I know for me, it was especially baffling that I could figure out other things. I could figure out like my work life, but I could not figure out my right. So you had
Yes.
that same.
Yes. Oh, so much. So just so, and I felt like I could control other things. If I worked hard enough, if I focused enough, there was always a way to figure out how to solve problems in the outside world. But when someone else was involved, when he was involved, I can't control him. It wasn't working. I sure tried. Um, I was just at such a loss.
Yeah. Was there a moment when you said, okay, we can't go on like this?
Actually, I was prepared to go on like that forever because I really didn't see any other option. It's almost like that sunk cost fallacy where I had been with him a really long time. We've been together 30 years now, over 30 years. We built a family together, a beautiful family. And I didn't want to do that to the kids, even though they're adults now. And I thought, I don't want to take my chances, that I'm going to find somebody else with, and that it's going to necessarily be any better. I just imagined that we would have different problems, and he's good to me. My husband was always very good to me. He just couldn't or wouldn't talk to me. It's just like he was like a blank, just inapproachable. There was just no way to, and if I tried to talk about things that mattered to me, he would change the subject. And I started to just not like him very much, and I just thought we're the wrong, he's the wrong person for me. I'm the wrong person for him. And I think he really felt like that. He felt like it's just so hopeless. I can't make her happy. I would be frustrated a lot of times because I would be like trying to talk to him and it would get to a point where he'd had enough, understandably looking back, and he would get up and start doing laundry or the dishes and then say, well, look, everything I do for you, I do everything for you. And I'm like, I don't want a maid, it's nice that all my clothes are folded or something, but I just want a friend, I want somebody to talk to. And it was really hard. So I tried different things. I read a million books and, like in my typical way, I thought there's got to be a way to figure this out. And if I just try hard enough, I can make it work. And I did find your books probably about 4 years ago. And I read them and I remember trying to implement some of the skills. And I remember feeling like, yeah, they do kind of work. Things are a lot more peaceful. He seems to respond better to me. But I still felt lonely. I still felt like he wasn't talking to me. And I thought this is going to help us live together well. This is going to help things be peaceful, but it's not going to bring me that connection that I want, so I kind of abandoned those skills. And then a couple years ago, I think I heard about a marriage retreat from someone that I knew that was really impressed with it. And I thought, well, we should try this. And I talked to him about it. Of course, he didn't want to go. He said, I'm happy in a marriage, which he didn't seem happy at all. But that was just his typical way of avoiding any.
Another lie.
Right. Yeah. So, but like, as was also typical, I just kept pressuring him, and finally he's like, fine, okay, we'll go. And it was wonderful. It was like transformational in a way. I got to talk to him in ways and see a side of him that I had never seen. And I could tell, like it was very real to both of us. And like there was a spark, like I could see that he really did love me and had loved me all these years. He just really didn't know how to tell me. And I remember after that experience, I felt kind of changed, and I thought, well, this is going to work. And he assured me, we'll stick with this. We will do whatever it takes. And we really tried to keep it going, keep up the recommendations that they told us and stuff. But within a month or two, things started reverting back to the way they had been before. But I think I had left, I was still changed. I knew that there was something in him. I knew that he really, really did love me. And that gave me hope. I thought, I've got to find a way to connect with him because it's not a lost cause. He does really love me. He does really care about me. And so then I went back to your books again, and I thought, this is something I can control. This is something I can try again. And maybe if I stick with it long enough, and if I, learn to be, the kind of person that I thought I should be after reading the books, that I can make it work. And I got a coach. And I thought if I had this accountability, maybe that'll make a difference if I really look at it long term, and not just try them for a couple of weeks or change my strategy every couple of weeks. I was going to really give it a fair shot. And I did coaching for 6 months. And again, things got very peaceful. He seemed really happy. And I was still lonely, but maybe not as lonely. It was kind of good to see him happy. And I felt very good about the kind of person that I was becoming. I felt much better about myself. And I thought, maybe this is as good as it gets. This is definitely a big improvement. I would say within the first 2 months, I saw like what you would think of maybe as a 70% improvement in our marriage, just the way we were relating to each other, much less stress. He seemed more comfortable, more relaxed, which made me feel like I could trust him more, like he wasn't always on the defensive or worried about if he was going to say the right thing or if he needed to lie or anything like that. So I did feel like things were better. And I think if you had asked him, he would have said, oh yeah, it's 100% better, at least on my side. Right. But I still felt like maybe there was a yearning, still on my part. And I remember talking to my coach about that. And I thought, well, maybe, this is good enough, right? This is where I should be happy and celebrating. And I was really glad that I was in coaching at that time, because she told me, she said, don't give up on what you really want, and she kept saying, what do you really want? She kept asking me over and over again, what do you really want? And I said, well, you know what I want? I want to feel connected. I want to feel like I'm in love. I want to feel like we are best friends and soulmates. And she said, don't give up on that. And I learned like that not giving up doesn't mean being controlling. It means, being my best self now, and but still holding out future hope for something better in the future, which is what I did. So I did self-fulfilling prophecies, and I tried to do voice recordings. I did of different scenarios that would go through, like if something turned out what seemed like it wasn't going well, I would try to like rerun the episode, whatever happened. I would try to rerun that through my mind and imagine how it could have turned out better, how I could have responded better, how I could have tweaked things a little bit.
So you're kind of like replaying the video of
exactly.
the incident.
And I would record those things, and then I would listen to those recordings in my car. I would, it gave me a chance to think more in depth about, my part in our interactions. And I started to see a change. I started to realize that even when I thought we were finished, when I thought we'd come as far as we were going to come, that there was still a long way to go, that there was still a lot that I could do. I remember it felt awkward for us to sit together on the couch. We each sat on one end of the couch most of the time, like if we were watching TV or something. And I thought, I'd like to sit next to him, but it just feels weird, right? It would just seem, we haven't done that in so long. It seemed weird. So I thought, well, if I have a reason, I bought a big bag of popcorn. I thought if I sit next to him and share the popcorn, that makes sense. That's natural. That's normal, right? And I started doing that like night after night. And then pretty soon, even if we didn't have popcorn, I could still sit by him, and it felt comfortable, not weird or strange. So I started grading myself every day, like on how good I was doing at staying on my own page. Like I would give myself a letter grade and maybe make some comments. And another thing I think was really important is I started being
wait, hold on. This is so good. I love this, where you gave yourself a letter grade for how well you stayed on your page. So how would your grades turn out? I'm just curious.
Actually, by the time I had the idea to give myself a letter grade,
did you have like a B average, or
I think I was probably a little bit higher than a B average.
B average? Wow, that's so great.
Yeah. I didn't always feel like I was on my own page in my head, but I was definitely on my own page as far as my behavior. But that got better too.
Well, what was your criteria for your grading? Like, how would you decide whether you got an A or a B or a C or whatever? Oh,
I just knew, did I make any comments? Did I criticize him for, it doesn't look like you shaved very close today, or
Right?
or it could have been anything, or I thought you were going to call me at this time, and I would just or ask him how he was handling a situation that we talked about previously. I would just let things go a lot more, and let him do his own thing, and show him that I trusted him and that I didn't need to be involved in everything.
Yeah. And you wanted to get a good grade. So
I wanted to get a good grade, and I wanted to kind of see how things were improving. It was motivating for me.
Yeah. And it sounds like a big focus was relinquishing inappropriate control, really staying off.
Oh, absolutely. I was so controlling.
Yeah.
I was so controlling. And like I said, critical. And a big part of it too, as things got better, it wasn't a big part in the beginning, but as things got better, I had to try to be vulnerable again. I had to try to start conversations. I had kind of given up on that because I thought, well, it's not going to go anywhere. He doesn't want to talk about what I want to talk about. So I had to try to start talking about things that I thought maybe he wouldn't respond to, but I did it. And I tried to do it in a way that was just non-controlling, no pressure. I would just say what I wanted to say. And if he picked up on it, great. If not, I would just let it go so that he would feel the freedom to engage or not. And I remember sometimes being disappointed. I remember I had a friend that passed away, and I felt kind of sad about I felt sad about that, and it was some aspect of that. And I was trying to talk to him, and he changed the subject immediately. And I remember thinking, "Wow."
Ouch. Yeah.
But because I had the skills and because I had had a little bit of experience, I thought, okay, it's fine, It's worth 1,000 little hurts like that to realize that overall he trusts me. He's comfortable talking to me. He sees me as approachable. He sees himself as capable. So it's one little thing. And that's how I look at things now. If nobody, like you said, nobody gets their way all the time. Nothing is perfect, but I don't have to hold him to that perfect standard. I'm accepting him the way he is and loving him the way he is, not wishing he was somebody different all the time.
Yeah, this is huge. And it almost sounds like, even though it was an ouch, and I hear how painful it is to have him change the subject when you are wanting to express some grief and just have him bear witness to that. It sounds like, and he didn't do that. But I also hear you sort of deciding, like, it's not a real hurt. Like, you decided there was no injury, and so there was no injury. Is that fair to
Exactly.
say?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is pretty extraordinary, right? Because I think in the past you couldn't get yourself, like, there was a whole story behind that. Like, oh, we're just never going to have those conversations. He's not that guy. And this was sort of like, oh, okay, there's like this little bump in the road, but whatever. You're able to write your own ship after that.
Right. Absolutely. And I find myself making excuses for him, which would not have sounded very attractive, when I first started with the skills. Like, if, saying, oh gosh, this is a great program, you're going to learn to make excuses for your husband.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
whereas before I was constantly critical and judgmental, I find myself, for example, after that, when that incident happened, I thought, well, he didn't respond. I was trying to share something that was important to me. But then I thought, his mother had just died close to the same time. And I thought, maybe it made him think about that. Maybe that was just too hard for him to talk about. Maybe, you know, he would have liked to respond, but he didn't, his feelings were too raw or something. So, there's always another way to look at every situation. I give him the benefit of the doubt now.
And you were able to bring some compassion and empathy to where he might
Exactly.
be.
Exactly.
And that hadn't been happening before. It sounds
Not
like.
at all.
Yeah. So you grew more compassionate as a person, as a wife.
Yeah.
So
And I can tell you, like, I always wanted to be more like the person that I am now. I think I'm a much better Christian now than I ever was trying to be a better Christian. The skills helped me in practical ways, where the platitudes and the ideals were just too much for me. I couldn't, it wasn't accessible.
right. Right. Just, yeah, I get that. Like, it was too general. So it sounds like you felt it was helpful to have the specific tools and
Oh,
the intimacy
yeah. The
skills. Yeah.
cheat, the cheat phrases, the spouse fulfilling prophecies. Um, yeah, it was nice to have that structure.
Yeah.
It was indispensable. Yeah, I don't think I could have done it without that. Yeah.
And what kinds of spouse fulfilling prophecies did you implement?
I would say things like, my husband is capable and of deep, meaningful relationship, deep, meaningful conversations. We're best friends, we're soulmates, we're close.
Beautiful. All right. And so last we heard, you were at like 70%. You tried to share your grief about your friend passing away. You changed the subject. So what happened? Now you have this, we're best friends, we're soulmates. He's capable of having these deep conversations. What happened?
I stuck with it. And like I said, I think that the turning point was when I started to be more vulnerable. We've had some incredible conversations, just like in the last year, more than we've had in the whole rest of our marriage.
Wow.
I think, yeah, combined for sure.
Really?
He's
More
told
in the
me,
last year than the whole 30 years.
absolutely, yeah. He's told me how, he thinks now that if we could have started over again, that he could do a lot better. That he understands things that he didn't understand before. And whenever my thoughts go to some time when maybe he hurt me or something, I think about that. I think about how, yeah, we would both do better if we could try again. And I don't feel any resentment. I feel, like you said, compassion
Yeah.
and forgiveness, and, forgiveness for myself as well.
Well, that's extraordinary that you don't feel any resentment. So where did your resentment go? How did that leave? What did you do?
I think focusing on
Yeah.
myself, just focusing on myself, and deciding that no matter what, I think this was key, deciding that no matter what happened with he and I, with our relationship, that I was going to be a person that I respected, that I was going to be a person that I knew I should be. And I don't think I would have seen that early on, because I would have thought most of my complaints are justifiable. Most of,
Yeah.
I felt like he was the problem.
Yeah.
And there was lots of evidence I could point to that would
Yeah.
support that. But when I stopped focusing on that and started focusing on what I can do, and I started seeing more like, oh yeah, that probably wasn't very fun to live with, or that kind of, I could see how I had done my part to drive him away, and to make him lose confidence. And he knew I didn't respect him. And like you said, that's like oxygen, and that fire had no oxygen. It was dying. It was just, it's amazing that we made it as far as we did, really.
Yeah. Well, this is fantastic. So, and and, and what is the evidence for you that like, okay, this really is working now?
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence for me, and I really, I think I feel very different. I mean, I think that is a big part of it. But I know it's working, like I said, because I find myself defending him and making excuses for him, and when he does things I don't like, just like you would do for a close friend.
Hmm.
And he does much less now that I don't like.
Oh,
Yeah, and I knew, like I said, I knew things were working when he said he wished he could start over. Like he knew he could do better. And I know it's working because we sit on the couch together now, and it doesn't feel weird. I know it's working because I can apologize now. I used to tell myself, well, I can't apologize. That's just too weird. I can't say it, and he wouldn't know what to say if I did say it. So I won't apologize. I'll just do better. I would just vow to do better. And I thought, do I want to be the kind of person who uh, wants to apologize, but just vows to do better? Or do I want to be the kind of person that actually apologizes? And I started apologizing. And I think even though he didn't know how to respond, he was kind of speechless and kind of just minimized it, like, oh, that's okay. I think it meant a lot to him. And then it meant a lot to me too. Again, it was just one more way I could feel better about myself. It was a signal to myself, that I am serious.
yeah, it is. And what is your relationship like now?
Uh, our relationship is not the same relationship. I feel like we have um, almost like a second chance. Our future looks completely different to me than our past.
Wow.
We talk
It's
so much
exciting.
more. No, I do see once in a while he does seem a little bit afraid, like about where the conversation is going. Like I can tell, maybe he'll back off a little bit, like he'll start to share or something, and then maybe he stops a little bit, and I kind of just let it go, right? Because I don't want him to feel overwhelmed. I don't want to feel like I'm trying to change him. I'm not trying to change him. I know he
Wow.
loves me, and I really feel very, very, very happy that I married this man. He's the
Mm.
one I love, and really, really happy that I was able to make it work with him.
Wow. Beautiful. Charlotte, congratulations on taking your marriage from really just kind of a painful limping along to then getting to like 70% of what you wanted. And now you're at some higher percentage, it sounds like. What percentage would you say you've accomplished of what you want in your marriage?
Oh, well, I mean, day to day, there's always you have different feelings, like but I've also learned not to measure it day to day, like you can't look at it that way. I feel 100% assured that I can be happy with this man the way things are for the rest of my life.
Wow. Outstanding. I give you all the credit for having the courage and finding the hope to implement the steps that got you to that point. It's really remarkable. So well
Thank you so
done.
much. Thank you very,
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah. What, what about the lying? Let me ask about that because that was a big pain point before. So do you still feel like he's lying to you a lot?
No, I don't feel like he's lying to me at all, but I don't follow up with every little thing either.
You're
Like I
not
used to,
you're not
I
looking
don't,
for
no, I'm
evidence that
not
he's
like
lying.
sorting through receipts and, cross-checking the bank account or anything like that. I trust him, and I feel like he knows I trust him, and I think that makes a difference. I think just the fact that he knows I trust him makes him, again, like I said, more relaxed. I think it makes him think more about what he really wants instead of thinking, can I get away with this? He thinks, he feels more accepted and loved the way he is. And I think he wants to please me. He wants to be honest.
Wow. I love that. So you're expecting the best from him and you're getting the best from him, is what I hear you
Mhm.
saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not
Yeah.
worried about it. It's funny. It's not, I can almost can't imagine if I put myself where I was before pre-skills, I can't imagine not worrying about it, because I would have thought, well, that's just isn't that the indicator of whether if you have a good relationship, if you're friends, if you're soulmates, if you have to lie to each other, that just proves that everything's wrong. But now I don't even think about it that way anymore. I
You
just
have
think
an
about what I can do to make things better.
yeah, you have a new pair of perspectives, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. So what's your tip to a woman who feels like she's where you were, where it's very distant, there's no deep conversations, they sit on opposite ends of the couch like strangers in a waiting room, and she really wants to have what you have now, where she feels like there is this emotional safety and that they are best friends again.
Yeah, I would say maybe as hard as it seems, try to relax. You can't see clearly when you're completely stressed out. You probably won't get the long-term support you need from your husband if you continue to approach the situation from a place of lack and desperation and utter disappointment. He'll just be too stressed or hopeless to help in long-term meaningful ways if he thinks that the problem is too big for him. And like I said, he'll just disengage more. So I think what I did to help myself relax is I got a plan, which what your books were the plan. And then just to believe in
Yeah.
that until you start to see results. And if you screw up, just go back as fast as you can and try to calmly get back on track. It will work. It absolutely will work. If you have trouble believing it will work, I would say try to remember that if it doesn't work, it will still be extremely valuable and very worth it, because you will be a better person. You'll be so much stronger and dignified by living the skills that you'll feel good about yourself and good about good about the way you treat this person that you promised to love, even if he doesn't deserve it. Your life will be absolutely better because you'll be better and you'll be stronger.
Mm, beautiful. And what about a woman who says, yeah, but I'm just making excuses for his bad behavior?
Well, you can't control it. That's for sure. You're not going to be able to control it. Only, obviously, like we've all been told our whole lives, but doesn't seem to sink in. You can't control anyone else. You can only control yourself. You can only, so I can see how that would be frustrating, but it doesn't work to try to control somebody else. The only thing you can do is create an environment that makes improvement possible, right? If you're the best person you can be, then things have a chance of getting better. But if you're just as messed up as he is, if you're doing things even inadvertently that are hurting a relationship, then there's no possibility, right? At least you're, by keeping your side of the street perfectly clean, shiny, spotless, and holding out hope for a better future, then that possibility is there. You're not trying to justify poor behavior, and I can see how that would feel like a risk, but the alternative is just to be like a police officer all the time.
Yeah.
And that does not promote intimacy. That does not make you close. That's not going to get you where you want to go.
And it's tiring. It's exhausting too. Yeah. Yeah. So I kind of hear you saying that before you were making excuses for your own bad behavior. Is that fair? Is that a good way to?
Well, I thought I was justified.
Right.
Like, I didn't even see it as bad behavior. I was coping, I didn't even
trying to survive.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But now looking back, it was not so good at all.
Yeah. I mean, I just love your accountability. Yeah. It's neat. So, and what would you say to yourself if you go back in time and talk to Charlotte? What would you tell her that you know now?
I would say just like you think that you can do anything that you want in life, you can be the kind of partner you want to be. You can make things better. You might think that you don't have control, but that's what the empowered wife is all about. It's like, you do have a lot of power. You have so much power. You're not helpless. You're not resigned to a life of loneliness just because you married the wrong person or something. You have to be the right person. I think women are meant to be choosy. So, and I already made my choice with my husband. So now I have to choose what kind of behavior, what standard I'm going to hold myself to. And I would say you can do better. You can hold yourself to a super high standard and give yourself the best possible chance for a really successful relationship.
Wow. I love that. And I know your children are grown, Charlotte, but has this impacted them in any way?
Yeah, I think so. I think I taught them to disrespect their father. I mean, just that was the example I set. And I think it was very, very painful. And I think it's still, lingering ramifications of that kind of behavior. But I'm setting a different example now. And I think that they're picking up on that. They both love their father. He was a terrific father. But I was always belittling him. And I think they see a change in me. I think they feel more comfortable around us because we seem to get along better. I think that's reassuring. And I hope that I'm a good example now for my daughter. So, that she can be a better wife when she's married.
That must feel so good to be able to be like that role model for your daughter, for her relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Beautiful. Love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing so personally, so intimately about your incredible transformation in your marriage. I'm so inspired to hear it. I know the listeners are inspired too. I'd like to give you a wife award for fixing your marriage.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
It's maybe one of the best awards I've ever received.
Right? It's a big accomplishment, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. And really, the world, I wish the world gave more acknowledgement for this accomplishment, right? So, but I want to certainly acknowledge you because it's encouraging and inspiring and helps keep my marriage shiny to get to hear. So
thank you so
much. If you're wondering how to get started with fixing your relationship and making it shiny again, then you need a roadmap. Get 6 simple steps to follow that will set your relationship up for success. Discover 3 common mistakes that wives make trying to fix their relationship that just make things worse when you download my free Adored Wife Roadmap. You can do that at getcherished.com. Go to getcherished.com now to get your roadmap in minutes.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award. And the advice that has me ruffled up this week was suggested to me as what I should have said back when my husband was avoiding me decades ago. And boy, did this exasperating, worn out, smelly old horse blanket piece of advice make me indignant. I even argued about it, which may have been ungracious on my part. But as you also know, if there's anything that will get a rise out of me, it's telling me something asinine would fix my relationship when I know darn well it won't. So the advice I got recently was that when my husband was avoiding me all those years ago, I should have said to him, quote, "I feel rejected." So I immediately translated that sentence based on my training from Mrs. Eisworth in high school freshman English. I feel rejected is in passive voice. In active voice, that translates to you rejected me. See, Mrs. Eisworth taught me that when you express yourself in passive voice, you're just overcomplicating the sentence, which she said new writers tend to do because they think it sounds more sophisticated, but it's not. It's just more confusing. So if I write, the bone was eaten by the dog, I'm just confusing my reader. It's more clear to write, the dog ate the bone. So saying, I feel rejected is the passive voice way of saying, I feel you rejected me, which is how I would say it if I hoped to avoid Mrs. Eisworth's vigilant red pen on my paper and to make myself clear, which I prefer. But if I used active voice to tell my husband, I feel you rejected me, that lays bare the fact that rejected is not a feeling at all, but an accusation. So I dropped the I feel part because it's bogus. So I'm left with saying to my husband, you rejected me, which has a pretty strong undertone of you're a jerk. Not that I didn't try saying things like that back in the bad old days. I mean, with apologies to Mrs. Eisworth, I did say things like that. And it never got me the close, playful, connected atmosphere I wanted, the one I have now. Not once. Plus, it always felt pretty crummy to try to get attention that way by complaining about not getting attention. It made it pretty clear that my husband didn't really want to spend any time with me because I was so resistible, because I was so critical. So that was a vicious cycle. And now when I think of complaining or criticizing my husband or anyone else that I love, or even the people that I work with, it's something I'd avoid like touching a hot stove, because in my experience, it doesn't create the outcome I enjoy, which is feeling connected, dignified, and grateful. In fact, I'm feeling grateful right now. So here's a shout out to Mary Eisworth for making me a better writer. I'm so grateful for your invaluable training. As for the advice that I should have told my husband, I feel rejected, that is the very, very, very worst relationship advice I have heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll talk about 7 resources for fixing your marriage. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that while many people know I'm a successful author, What I really wish people knew about me is that I got the only perfect score on the AP English exam in the whole school.